This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem.
April 11th, 1970 gave birth to the famous saying, "Houston, we've had a problem." A day that will forever be etched in the annals of space exploration. On this day, the Apollo 13 mission, the third manned mission intended to land on the moon, lifted off from Kennedy Space Center. It was an endeavor of monumental proportions, a testament to human ingenuity and ambition. The Apollo program, under the stewardship of NASA, was a series of lunar missions that had already etched its name in history with Apollo 11's successful moon landing. Its goal was not just to land man on the moon, but to establish the United States as a leader in space exploration and technology. This third lunar mission, Apollo 13, was no less significant. It was a mission that carried the weight of its predecessors, but with its own unique objectives and challenges. The crew on this mission was a trio of exceptional astronauts. Commander James A. Lovell Jr., a veteran astronaut with Gemini and Apollo experience under his belt. Command Module Pilot John L. Swigert Jr., a testament to the depth of the astronaut corps, stepping in at the last moment for original crew member Ken Mattingly. And lastly, Lunar Module Pilot Fred W. Hayes Jr., a first-time spacefarer, entrusted with piloting the lunar module Aquarius. The launch went as planned. The Saturn V rocket, a towering testament to human engineering, roared into the sky, leaving a trail of fire and smoke. As Apollo 13 left the confines of Earth's atmosphere, it marked the start of what was expected to be a routine mission. However, as we now know, this mission was anything but routine. As Apollo 13 left Earth, it carried not just 3 astronauts, but the hopes and dreams of an entire nation. Little did they know this mission would become a dramatic battle for survival and a testament to human resilience in the face of adversity. But for now, the journey had just begun. On the third day of the mission, at April 13th, tranquility gave way to terror. The tranquility of space was abruptly shattered by the chilling sound of an explosion. A routine stir of an oxygen tank had triggered a catastrophic chain of events. The explosion had damaged the service module, the life-supporting backbone of the Apollo 13 spacecraft, leaving it crippled and gasping for life in the cold void of space. The explosion had not only ripped away a panel of the service module, but also had caused a significant reduction in life-supporting resources. The spacecraft was rapidly losing its vital supply of electricity, light, and water. The situation was further complicated by the loss of both the primary and secondary means of removing carbon dioxide from the cabin. All of a sudden, what was intended to be a voyage of lunar exploration had turned into a desperate fight for survival. Aboard the spacecraft, about 1 to 2 seconds after the bang, the master alarm light and the main direct current light went on, followed by a fuel cell light. That prompted Swigert to call Mission Control. "Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here." Capsule communicator astronaut Jack R. Loosma asked, "This is Houston, say again, please." Lovell replied, providing some more detail on their condition. Houston, we've had a problem here." At Mission Control, the team was grappling with the magnitude of the crisis. They were racing against time to piece together a survival strategy, while the world held its breath. Meanwhile, on board, the crew was quickly adapting to the grim reality. Commander James Lovell, Command Module Pilot John Swigert, and Lunar Module Pilot Fred Hayes were no longer moonbound explorers. They were survivors, improvising and adapting to the dire circumstances. The crew was facing a staggering array of immediate challenges. Power had to be conserved, cabin heat was dwindling, and water was in short supply. The very air they were breathing was slowly becoming toxic. The spacecraft was now a death trap, with every passing second bringing them closer to disaster. Apollo 13 had become a ticking time bomb. The mission had drastically changed. It was no longer about landing on the moon. It was about getting home, alive. Stranded 200,000 miles from Earth, the Apollo 13 astronauts faced a situation of sheer adversity. As their command module became a lifeless shell, the crew had to think on their feet. About an hour after the accident, Mission Control announced that, "We are now looking toward an alternate mission, swinging around the moon and using the lunar module power systems because of the situation that has developed here this evening." The astronauts were to move into Aquarius, which would serve as a lifeboat, while the disabled Apollo 13 swung around the moon and headed homeward. All thoughts of a lunar landing had long since been abandoned. The lunar module, initially designed to ferry 2 astronauts to the lunar surface, was now repurposed as a sanctuary for the 3 astronauts. This was a complete departure from its original mission. However, the lunar module was not equipped to support 3 men for the 4-day journey back to Earth. Power was scarce, cabin heat was dropping, and water was limited. The crew had to ration their remaining resources, knowing their survival was hanging by a thread. Still 3 days away from Earth, the astronauts moved into the lunar module Aquarius, which they powered up before shutting down the command module Odyssey to conserve the latter's emergency battery power for the atmospheric re-entry maneuver at the end of the mission. Only the command module could pass through Earth's atmosphere. The lunar module would have to be discarded, along with the service module, before the outer atmosphere was reached. In the meantime, however, the lunar module would be their home. Radio contact with Apollo 13 was lost during the evening of April 14th as the craft swung behind the moon, passing at an altitude of 264 kilometers, 164 miles, at the closest approach. Soon afterward, the spacecraft started along its return path home, a planned landing in the Pacific Ocean. Back on Earth, a team of engineers at NASA's Mission Control faced their own battle against time and uncertainty. They worked relentlessly, running simulations and brainstorming solutions to help bring the astronauts home safely. One of the most critical challenges was the rising levels of carbon dioxide in the lunar module. The existing filters were not designed for such extended use and were quickly becoming saturated. The engineers devised a makeshift solution. Using duct tape, plastic bags, and parts from the command module's carbon dioxide filters, they crafted an adapter to fit the command module's square filters into the lunar module's round receptacles. This improvised device, later known as the mailbox, was a crucial lifeline for the astronauts. The crew, following instructions relayed from Earth, built the mailbox in the confines of the lunar module. This ingenious solution worked, reducing the carbon dioxide levels and ensuring the crew could breathe safely for the remainder of their perilous journey. Against all odds, hope was being painstakingly engineered. The fight for survival was far from over, but with every challenge met and overcome, the crew of Apollo 13 and their Earth-bound counterparts proved the power of human resilience and ingenuity in the face of adversity. The journey back to Earth was a race against time and unknown. With a crippled spacecraft, the crew of Apollo 13, along with the tireless teams at Mission Control, faced a daunting task. They had to steer a course correction, not once, but twice, using the lunar module's descent engine, an operation that was never designed for such a purpose. This was an uncharted territory. Every move was a calculated risk, every decision a potential difference between life and death. The first course correction ensured Apollo 13 would not be lost in space forever, while the second one fine-tuned their trajectory, aiming for a narrow re-entry corridor in the Earth's atmosphere. A miss on either side of this corridor could mean a disastrous re-entry or a bounce back into space. But the challenges didn't stop there. The lunar module, their lifeboat, was not designed for re-entry. The crew had to transfer back into the command module, the only part of their spacecraft that could survive the fiery descent through Earth's atmosphere. It had been cold and inactive since the accident, and reviving it was another Herculean task that demanded every ounce of their remaining energy and resources. While the ground teams in Houston worked around the clock to devise solutions and procedures, the astronauts executed them flawlessly, despite their fatigue and the less than ideal conditions inside the spacecraft. They had to power up the command module, a process that usually took hours, in a fraction of the usual time and with a bare minimum of power. As Apollo 13 hurtled towards Earth, the world held its breath. The crew had done everything they could. Now, it was up to the laws of physics and the robustness of the technology they had set in motion. The return journey of Apollo 13 was a perilous one. During the morning of April 15th, Apollo 13 entered the region of gravitational influence of Earth. Calculations showed that the speeded-up trajectory needed an additional refinement, so the lunar module descent propulsion system was again ignited. The adjustment was successful and the flight wore on. The temperature in the lunar module had dropped to 3 degrees Celsius, 38 degrees Fahrenheit, and condensation covered the walls. The cold, weary astronauts slept fitfully between receiving instructions on spacecraft separation and re-entry maneuvers they would soon undergo upon approaching Earth. The astronauts then moved out of the lunar module and back into Odyssey, powering up the life support systems that had been shut down in order to conserve them for re-entry. The two modules then were separated as pressure in the connective tunnel was permitted to force them apart. The command module, with the astronauts inside, continued onward, entered Earth's atmosphere and splashed down on target on April 17th at 1:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The astronauts had no lasting ill effects from their ordeal. The Apollo 13 mission had become a successful failure. Apollo 13, the mission that failed to reach the moon, succeeded in reaching the hearts of millions. In the wake of the crisis, NASA launched a thorough investigation to uncover the root cause of the accident. The findings pointed to an oxygen tank explosion, triggered by damaged insulation on electrical wiring. This unforeseen flaw had profound implications, leading to a series of changes in design, testing, and emergency procedures. The Apollo program emerged from this ordeal stronger, more resilient, and better prepared for the unexpected. The sheer willpower and determination of the crew, coupled with the tireless efforts of the ground control team, turned a potential disaster into a triumph of survival. This mission's impact on space exploration policy and safety protocols cannot be overstated. It served as a wake-up call, highlighting the need for robust contingency planning and the importance of a well-drilled support team. And so Apollo 13, originally slated as a routine lunar landing mission, became an extraordinary testament to the power of teamwork, problem-solving, and sheer human grit. That's it for now. Please subscribe, like, and share. Until next time.